Welcome into the Cricket Wireless Fantasy Football Faceoff here on getsportsinfo.com. I'm Dan Clasgens. He's James Adams. Week 1 is in the books. A lot of things to discuss, James, but nothing more exciting to discuss than the play of RG3. How about Robert Griffin III? He led the Redskins to that huge upset over the Saints in week number 1, and he did it in convincing fashion. You're talking about a player, he had a perfect quarterback rating in the first half, the first rookie ever to do that with over 10 attempts. He's the first guy with the lead a team to a 40-point effort in his first ever NFL start in 62 years. James, we had him as a low-end QB1 entering the season. I say he's moving on up the radar now.
You know, Dan, I was saying temper your expectations with the rookie quarterbacks this year, and not all of them did very well yesterday, but RG3 was one who did outstanding. Had 320 yards passing, another 40 yards rushing. Outstanding performance. Really surprised. We knew the Saints defense would be down due to Bountygate. Got some players back, but not really in the fold yet. I did not see that coming at all, but I tell you what, you're right, Dan. He's got to be in the top 10 next week. And at the Rams, not a bad matchup. So I think RG3 moving up on my board. I'm taking back what I said about him as far as a rookie quarterback. His post-game interview, he looked like he had been doing football interviews in the NFL for 5-6 years. He didn't look like a rookie even one bit yesterday.
Chances are most owners that drafted him, he was their backup quarterback. It's going to be real interesting to see how those lineups are handled heading into this week, too. James, another player that's on that fantasy radar big time, CJ Spiller. And there were a few bright spots for Buffalo in week 1. Not only did their defense look atrocious, but running back Fred Jackson with that LCL sprain, he's out indefinitely. Could be just a couple weeks, could be a lot longer. CJ Spiller, clearly with Fred Jackson now, it's going to be a hot fantasy commodity. Even with Fred Jackson in there, though, I'm thinking that the Bills might start leaning to him because of the durability questions. He's going to have a role, and he's going to be one of those fantasy running backs you got in the mid-rounds of your drafts. He's going to pay big-time dividends.
Yeah, CJ Spiller becomes an RB2 automatically, even if we get Fred Jackson back anytime soon. 14 carries for 169 yards, averaging over 10 a touch. I know he had a big 50-yard blast for a touchdown. But, Dan, I mean, you look at him kind of finally evolving into that role that they expected when they drafted him. C.J. Spiller could be a guy that all of a sudden you lean heavily on as an RB2. And as we get closer to bye weeks, if Jackson's not back by then, absolutely a guy that you're going to be starting on a week-to-week basis.
Michael Vick, here's a quarterback that didn't quite have that opening week performance owners were hoping him for. James, 4 turnovers, just couldn't get it going against a average or maybe slightly above average Browns defense. The passing game was out of whack. Vic did not have it. Is there reason for concerns with him as a fantasy quarterback going into week number 2?
Well, you know, Mike Vick did say after the game he felt like he let his teammates down, that he could see some doubt in the eyes of his teammates in the huddle. It was a tough matchup on the road. Anytime you can go on the road in week 1 and get a win, it's good for your team. So I think the teammates will be on board. Obviously, the ribs were a little bit banged up, and he's dealing with those injuries. But quite frankly, he just didn't look that good yesterday. So I still have expectations for him to be a good fantasy QB1 when healthy. But certainly a little bit of cause for concern. Cleveland's not a great team, and he struggled mightily against them.
The quarterback that did look good was Peyton Manning. I mean, any questions we had about whether this guy can still get it done, they were answered, James, in that Sunday night game against the Steelers. Manning goes off for 253 yards, a pair of touchdowns, had the big bomb to Demaryius Thomas, 19 to 26 passing. You can't question Peyton Manning and his ability to manage a game and manage a huddle. I still don't view him as this elite fantasy quarterback option. He's going to be a good QB1. I think he's capable of not only helping the Broncos to the playoffs, but fantasy owners alike.
You know, if you've got him as QB1 and you took a little bit of a risk on him because of the neck, we didn't know what was going to happen, you got to feel really good right now. I mean, Peyton came in, looked a little rusty early, then he put his team into that quick no-huddle drive in the second quarter, and the Steelers didn't have an answer for that. Peyton went up-tempo, and you saw him after the first couple of drives doing what the old Peyton did. That's make reads, change the play at the line of scrimmage. And once he got into that mode, he really took control of that game, had the offense under his grasp immediately. Not a problem of concern for me, because Peyton Manning is one of the smartest football players in the history of the game. So I knew he'd have that offense in his mind But for him to go out on the field against a tough team looking for revenge from a playoff loss last year, he did absolutely everything you could have expected. Once he got over those first quarter jitters, Peyton Manning looked like the Peyton of old. I will not be surprised if he is close to the top 5 fantasy quarterback at the end of the year, maybe in that 7 to 8 window, but I'd certainly be happy to have him. I was scared of him early, but boy, he looks great right now.
He does look good. Looks a little weird seeing him in that Denver orange, though. It's going to take some getting used to, but either way, he is certainly impressive. 4 straight scoring drives he led the Broncos on as they win that game. Be sure to stay tuned for more great fantasy news at getsportsinfo.com. You can also like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TSFootball. Be sure to join myself, James, Stephanie Theobald this Sunday morning. It's Cricket Wireless Fantasy Football Game Day. Fox Sports 1360, 9 a.m. We'll see you there.